and welcome to 2014 Republican Candidates Debate for State Representative in the 10th Plymouth District. My name is Mark Lindy, and I'm the General Manager of Brockton Community Access, and in our public service role to inform voters in Brockton and the surrounding communities what's going on in elections. We always have debates, we always have candidates, and luckily we have some volunteer panelists to help us out. So I'm going to start with the panelists first, and then I'm going to introduce the two candidates. So I will go left to right, and the first panelist that we have on the panel over here would be Ray Henningsen, who is a member of the school committee. Ray is Ward 7. He's in his first term on the school committee, and all-around good guy and a fellow board member at Brockton Day Nursery. Right in the middle of Ray and the third panelist is Jean Falcone.
Yes.
Who is the chairwoman of the Brockton Republican City Committee. She's a state committee woman going on. It's got to be.
A lot of years.
You've been a while, right?
Yes.
Okay, and she's a familiar in Brockton. I see her around in the local restaurants, her and her wonderful husband, Peter. And we have Tom Minicello, who has been on election night coverage with me. He's the vice chairman of the Brockton School Committee. Tom is in his, what term, Tom, already?
This is my fourth term, going into the 8th year.
Fourth term going into his 8th year, and Tom is the vice chair and gets to chair on a regular basis when the mayor is otherwise occupied. So let me introduce the two candidates for state rep, and we will also go from left to right. The first candidate is John Cruz. John Cruz is from West Bridgewater. He was formerly the rep back in the day, as my son would like to say.
2 years ago.
Okay, and John is running for rep. And to his right is Colleen Maloney. Colleen Maloney is on the Southeastern Regional School Committee. She's currently the chair, and she's from West Bridgewater, and her mother is a selectman. Okay, so welcome to everybody. We're going to start with opening statements. We did a scientific, study in the hallway, and Colleen got to pick the first spot. So you have 2 minutes for your opening statement, Colleen.
Thanks, Mark, for having me, and I want to thank the moderators for agreeing to volunteer to this. So thank you, guys. My name is Colleen Maloney. I'm running for state rep in the Plymouth 10th District. I grew up in West Bridgewater, went to the schools in the district, and I just graduated from Stonehill College, just right outside the district. I also am on Southeastern Regional's school committee. I grew up in a family that always pushed the importance of knowing what was going on in your community and then being involved in the community. My grandmother taught at West Bridgewater Public Schools. My mom was on the school committee for like 12 years, and now she's on West Bridgewater's Board of Selectmen. And so, we've always tried to know what issues impact us. So that's why a few years ago, I decided to join Southeast Regional's school committee. Since then, I've, been looking at how the state handles education funding was really what got me interested in the issues that are going up with the state. And then from there, it's just other issues as far as local aid being cut, and jobs. It's so difficult to find a job in Massachusetts that I just thought we need someone to get up to Beacon Hill who will fight for local aid. We'll stop looking to the taxpayers to pay for everything, and then also try and bring some jobs into the community. So thank you again for having me.
Okay, you have a little more time. Do you want to use it, or?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Okay. John, you have 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you to the panelists for affording me the opportunity to introduce myself to the voters of the city of Brockton. I'll introduce myself as well. I'm from West Bridgewater. I've grown up in West Bridgewater, went to West Bridgewater schools. I'm the third of 4 children from my parents. My oldest brother, Ed, is a doctor. My second brother, Tim, he's a district attorney. And I've got a younger sister who works for a medical assistance office. A little bit more about myself is that I'm also a small business owner. I've had a small business, Consolidated Plumbing, for the past 23 years in West Bridgewater. And in that time, I've had, obviously, employees that come and go, and we work together. I'm an employer, but I'm also a person that signs the back of a check as well as the front. I feel that my experience as a former state representative at this seat 22 years ago affords me and the district the opportunity of making things, to achieve things in Beacon Hill that maybe the other candidates don't have the ability to. My term on Beacon Hill 22 years ago, I saw a lot of changes. Brockton, as we know, was going through some tough times back then, and I helped avert a payless payday for the city employees. I got West Bridgewater's local aid advancement for their library reconstruction project back 7 years ahead of schedule. And I also received money for some much-needed fire towers in Plymouth County. The local fire chiefs came to me, and they requested to replace the radios. As I mentioned, I'm a small business owner. I'm also a member of the West Bridgewater Fire Department. I've been on the fire department for quite a few years. I'm also a member of the Housing Authority, and I'm also the chairman of the Board of Health. I just want to thank the panelists for affording us the opportunity to introduce ourselves to the voters. And once again, my name is John Cruz, and I'm a candidate for the state, for the Republican ticket on the state Republican, for 10th Plymouth District. Thank you.
Perfect, good timing. Okay, we're going to start with the questions, and all the questions will be directed to both candidates. If for some reason there's any kind of a disagreement, we'll allow some rebuttal time as well. We'll do 2 minutes for questions, see how many questions we get through. We'll probably do a short lightning round, where it's like a yes or a no or a short answer to a question, and we will allow each of the candidates to ask each other a question. And then we'll do closing statements. So we're going to start, I'm trying to see where the camera is focused. I think we're going to start left to right with Ray asking the first question.
Sure. Please describe what the role of government is, in your opinion.
And I'm going to start with John on this one.
Well, the role of government, in my opinion, is to provide the services that, first of all, to provide the services for everybody that lives in the community, as well as the most needy and the people that can afford to pay the taxes. As a member of a few committees in town, I see firsthand what government does for services. As a member of the fire department, I've been to burning houses. I've helped rescue children from when they fall through ice. I mean, that's what government's all about. Government provides the services that other businesses, other areas that don't have the tools to do that. I believe that we pay our taxes, and our taxes are an investment in the future, and that's why we pay to have these services to help us out in times of need.
Okay, same question for Polly?
I believe the role of government is, to help us pay for things like school and police and fire, et cetera. But I also think it should be limited in nature, and I think, especially in Massachusetts, they've been growing too rapidly, and there's been a lot of government intrusion. They try to take over different things, and I think the private sector can usually do a better job at handling that. One example that I recently saw is Comcast Cable saw that there was an issue with more and more children needing access to the internet to get their schoolwork done. And so this is, a private company that said, okay, well, for a lower rate, we can give you basic services to families that need help with this. And so, we always give businesses somewhat of a bad rap and say, no, let's turn to the government and let's raise taxes and let's have them, start regulating more and more things. And personally, I like to see a more limited government, because when government's smaller, there's more accountability. And so, when we're paying our taxes, it's easier to see exactly what that's going to. But again, when it gets too big, there's, just too much fraud and not enough accountability and transparency.
Okay. Next question is Jean.
Hi. Okay. When introducing important new legislation, would you reach across the aisle and make concessions to guarantee passage?
And start with Colleen on this one.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. In Massachusetts, you're going to have to be bipartisan, especially for issues that are particularly concerning to the city of Brockton. One example being local aid. The debate on that was recently silenced. I would love to see, work with the other 2 representatives in the city of Brockton to say, we need more local aid. We need more Chapter 70 funding. We absolutely need more infrastructure money to pay for the roads. So yeah, I would definitely be reaching across the aisle and trying to make, my point as to why this bill needs to get passed.
Okay, John?
Well, I feel from that my past experience that I've already achieved that. I mean, I've worked with the other side of the aisle. Like I mentioned earlier, I averted a payless payday with the City of Brockton, for the City of Brockton employees, and we receive our local aid money in advance. And that's what it's all about, working with the other side of the aisle. As a matter of fact, my first term in office, after election, they put you in a room called the bullpen, and you sit at a large room according to alphabetical order. Well, my roommate for a period of 3 months happens to be the Speaker of the House right now. So I feel that if I do need assistance on a certain piece of legislation to move it through the House, through the proper channels, that I can pick up the phone and I can deal directly with the Speaker, as opposed to waiting it work its way through committee.
Okay. Tom, next question.
Good evening. My question deals with crime, and crime is an issue that concerns many Brocktonians. What thoughts and ideas, if any, can you share that relate to efforts in order to reduce criminal recidivism in the Brockton area?
Start with John.
Well, I feel that, first of all, and what we need to do is we need to increase our local aid back to the city. And by saying that, it will assist the local police to put crime back where it belongs, behind bars. And that's when it comes into law enforcement, saying the district attorney's office, who I will work side by side, hand in hand, to get things through. I mean, they need the tools to do their job properly. And I think by doing so, by fighting hard to increase our local aid and working with the parties involved, either the police chief or the people on the police department or the district attorney's office, that we can help the city of Brockton achieve, once again, become the city of champions. I mean, it's all about getting the tools that they need and the resources that they need to put crime in its place, and that is behind bars. We need to take care of the crime issue, and the only way we're going to do it, we have to be forceful, and we have to do our due diligence to keep these people behind bars and keep the bad guys out of the public, so we feel free to walk the streets.
Same question, Colleen?
Yeah, it comes down to, of course, local aid and getting more officers back on the street, especially whereas if you look at the city of Brockton and the amount of officers that they have and you compare it to Fall River, unfortunately, Brockton's been running into some issues with, they'll let officers go, but they won't refill that position due to issues with pensions, et cetera. But it also, you mentioned recidivism rates, and I think one thing that's important to look at is I completely support things like drug courts, and then also creating some type of prostitution courts. Those two, just for two examples, recidivism rates among those two populations are incredibly high. And right now, the way it works is they're kind of just hit with a fine and then they're somewhat sent on their way. But if we can get them early and say, if you complete this program, by the time, if we get them in arraignment and we say, if you complete this program, by the time you come back, if you've completed this program, we'll dismiss it, then I think if we can get them into the help that they need, we can in long term start saving the money. That's not to say, of course, if they're violent offenders or if, the drug courts don't work and they're habitual offenders, we do need then to step in and get them off the streets permanently.
Thank you. We're going to go back to Ray with his next question.
Please describe your stance on gun control.
And we'll flip it, and Colleen first.
I'm a supporter of the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to carry. It's the Second Amendment. I believe in the right to carry, and I think this recent gun legislation was flawed. We're already the strictest state in the country as far as attaining an LCC. It puts too much, it turns someone who's trying to apply for an application almost into a criminal, because we leave the final say with the police chiefs, which nothing against, every police chief I've met I've liked, but it comes down to that's our Second Amendment right. And so this bill I would not have supported just because we already have really strict laws on it.
John?
Well, I feel, first of all, I'm a Second Amendment rights advocate myself. I mean, I think we should have the right to bear arms. I've been a lifetime NRA member. But what I think is that with this legislation, all it does, it protects the people with the illegal guns. I mean, we need the taxpayer, we need the citizen out there to feel free and comfortable to be able to purchase a gun legally. I think what this does, it just takes some of the rights away from them. I mean, unfortunately, we're not going to keep the weapons away from the criminals that need the guns. We just need to enforce the laws that we currently have. Forget about the new legislation. We need the new law. We need to enforce the tougher laws that we have and keep these people behind bars when they get caught using a weapon in the act of a crime.
Okay. Next question, Jean.
Okay. How do you feel about the chance of a new drug court being placed downtown Brockton? And do you feel that this is detrimental, or do you feel that it will benefit us? What's your feelings on the drug scene in downtown Brockton?
John first.
Well, I think we have to have it someplace where there's access, public access to get to the drug court. I don't know if the drug court is the answer to the solution of the problem that exists with a person that commits a crime, that they should be offered the right to go through a drug court as opposed to the regular criminal process. The people that break into the houses of the people to continue the habit, they need to be taught a lesson, and if that's the case, by going to jail, and that's what we need. We need to teach the people a lesson. Obviously, there are people out there that need treatment. That's where the state has to come forward and offer additional beds for treatment. Prison is not the answer for the person that needs the assistance to get off their drug habit.
Colleen?
So yeah, I somewhat touched upon it earlier, but I do think it would be beneficial to the city of Brockton because the South Shore especially has been really struggling with the opiate addiction in the outbreak. And so I think having it in places like Brockton and Plymouth, et cetera, would be beneficial overall. But it's important to look at, the type of offender and make sure that they're not violent offenders and they really are someone who just genuinely needs the help.
Okay. Next question, Tom.
My next question deals with education. As a consequence of the federal government not addressing the immigration question, what are your thoughts as it relates to urban centers like Brockton having funding to educate its increasing English language learner population, and where should such funding sources originate?
Colleen first.
So, like I somewhat mentioned this earlier a little bit, but I think education costs are, one of my top priorities up on Beacon Hill just because of the Chapter 70 funding being incredibly lax over the past few years. Brockton especially is a gateway city, but from my time on Southeast Regional, seeing the issues with English being a second language, I think there needs to be some special funding allocated specifically for classes to get these kids up to where they need to be as far as reading levels, so for Southeastern, we get them freshman year and we only have 2 years to get them ready to pass MCAS. And so with those 2 years, a lot of the issue is they come from families that, English isn't the primary language. And so there needs to be some special funding, especially in gateway cities, to look at getting these kids up to the correct reading level. And we haven't seen that yet, and I would like to even argue that it be a separate chapter that does not really necessarily go based off the regular formula, just because there are certain gateway cities that you can really target that would need the funding.
So just
Go ahead, John.
where should that funding come from, I guess, is part of the question too.
You still have time, so.
Okay. The state budget, the budget continues to grow and we continue to waste it on, there's been a rollout of $2 billion in waste. I think there are plenty of, whether it's, EBT fraud or the tax amnesty plan that Jeff Deal just got through, there's plenty of ways we can find that funding, and it's doable without raising taxes.
Thank you.
Okay, John.
Well, I think we have to look at why we have so many unfunded mandates and who is actually gaining by the unfunded mandate. Obviously, the communities only have so many dollars to work with. And if the state comes down with another mandate requiring you to the English as a second language, whatever dialect that individual might have to be taught, I think it's something they have to that we have to rely on them to fund these adequately. The surrounding towns, East Bridgewater and West Bridgewater, aren't as involved as great as the city of Brockton. But I think I'll be fighting strong for Brockton to receive their money, their fair share of local aid. I just want to talk quickly about where the spending is going. When I was there previously, 20 years ago, the state budget was about just shy of $10 billion with 6 million people. Now it's fast forward 22 years later, and we've got a budget of $37 billion. There's a lot of spending in there that's increased. That's what we have to look at. I think we need to get the biggest bang for our buck, go after line item by line item where the money is going, and issue it accordingly where we feel it should be. But I really want to say is that when the state comes down with a mandate, they need to fund it properly. So it doesn't affect the student that's excelling in that particular subject.
Thank you.
Okay, before I go to the next question, I'm just going to ask a fairly quick one since we're on the topic of education, and that's one of my areas too. What do you think of the current educational funding formula, and would you seek to change it in any way? I'm going to start with John.
Well, I think what we have to do is compare, again, I mean, I'm not that familiar with the formula, but what I'm saying is that, what I said earlier, is that the unfunded mandates have to be looked at, and they have to be funded by the state, not something that is a directive from Beacon Hill down to the communities, where they pretty much have to fend for themselves.
Okay, Colleen?
So the formula is, yes, I would look into changing it somewhat as far as, I would keep the bigger cities and the gateway communities that need it at the same. But when you look at on a smaller level, there are, smaller municipalities that are not getting, there are two communities that are comparable to each other, but they're not getting the same type of funding just because of formula that was decided, 20 some odd years ago. And so it definitely needs to be addressed. It's something that somewhat comes up with Southeastern Regional just because, Brockton gets a good amount of funding, but they deserve that funding. They're 60% of our population. But when you look at some of the other smaller communities, there's always a question of, if these two towns only have around 30 kids each coming to the schools, why is there such a discrepancy? And it comes down to both, there's a separate formula for the vocational and regional schools, but it's somewhat similar as far as what the state then gives to the cities and towns. And so it's definitely something that needs to be looked at and needs to be addressed.
Thank you. Okay, next question is from Ray. And it'll be first for, let me make sure I'm doing the order right, it'll be Colleen first.
Describe 3 items of waste on Beacon Hill and how you would address them.
So first and foremost, I think what needs to be attacked, and there's somewhat been some leeway there, is the EBT and the fraud abuse. These past couple of years, there have been a lot of changes made, but there's still a lot of room for improvement. We see about $15 million a year of our EBT money being spent in other states, especially in, it's not neighboring states of Rhode Island. It's in Alaska, it's in Hawaii, it's in the Cayman Islands. So I think we need to rein in on that. We run off of almost like an honor system where someone walks in and says, I am so-and-so, this is my social security number. We need to be stricter about who's getting these benefits, especially because there are people who genuinely need them that are not getting them because the state isn't being, cautious enough in the legislation that they pass that says who has access to these funds. So that's one. The second is somewhat developing, but it's the Healthcare Connector website. The website was a total failure, and then right now there's about 250,000 people who they weren't able to correctly cite where they wanted to be, and so there's this third, it's almost just like a dumping pool, it's like a third option, which we're not even sure if it's compliant with federal regulations, and so we don't know who is signing up for it, we don't know, if they really are eligible for said benefits, and so that is projected to cost the state between the added category and then the cost of just getting the website up and running, which it still isn't. It's going to, by the end of this calendar year, run at about estimated $500 million. And then the third one is just, there's been a 40% increase for payroll for state employees who make over $100,000 a year, and that has cost the state $354 million. And so I would definitely look at whether or not they're actually doing the job that they deserve the raise for.
John?
Well, I think Colleen touched on the EBT problems. I think, first of all, what we have to do, we need to put photo IDs on the card. Now, I know that's been on the EBT card. I know they've attempted that previously, but we have to do our due diligence to make sure that we make sure that the people that deserve or that are receiving the benefits are actually that person. There needs to be more accountability on the card. When a card is lost, there needs to be an update as to the funds that still exist on that existing card. Also, I think we have to look at other things. We have to look at, for instance, the $11 million that we just spent on renovating the State House. I mean, that's the frivolous spending that needs to be looked at. Then we have $2.5 million for sex reassignment surgery. I mean, when we see that kids are suffering in our schools because of the unfunded mandates, because of this spending, that there is no accountability up on Beacon Hill. That's why I plan on going back to Beacon Hill to make sure that we do have our checks and balances. We need to make sure that our funds are going to the right direction, not to the direction that greases someone's palm or feeds someone's pocket. We need to make sure that the funds go to the right area.
Okay, next question would be Jean, and first for John.
Okay. John. Okay. I was all prepared. I didn't know it was going to go that way. Okay. I can't remember what I asked you. Okay. When and if you go into the State House, all right, you seem quite familiar with the ways and the means of doing this. I asked you a question before, and I will ask it again. How long do you think it would take a freshman to go in there and to be able to be part of and be parcel of getting a bill passed, to have the support that you need?
Well, obviously, there's a learning curve connected with any job that we start, and I feel it's at least a term or 2 terms. I think the other legislators that are representing the city now would have a better answer to that. But I just know from my past experience that in order to get things accomplished, you need to cross the aisle, and you need to reach out to the opponents. I have a record. I have the experience of getting things accomplished. I think we're at a point in time where we need continuity in terms of the services that we receive and the skills that we have of our legislators up there. I feel that I'm the only one in the race with that ability. I'm the only one because of my proven track record. There will be no learning curve with me. Like I mentioned earlier, I know the key players that are in the position up there to help the city of Brockton, the town of West Bridgewater, and the town of East Bridgewater. So I feel that come day one, after I get sworn in January, I can jump right into the fray and get my hands dirty and do what's needed to get what's best for the constituents of the 10th Plymouth District.
Okay, and, answer it, I guess, in a different way, right?
Yeah, so I'm not going to argue that I have not been up there yet, and I understand that a school committee is completely different than Beacon Hill, but I would like to note that I was only on the school committee for about a year and a half, and after about a year and a half, my peers on the school committee elected me to be their chair. So there was some learning curve there, but I can hit the ground running, and I'm ready to get up there and listen and learn, and just whatever the concerns are of the constituents, bring that up to Beacon Hill, and I'm willing to reach across the aisle with the other 2 reps and with any reps, whether in our caucus or in the other caucus, just because, I'm on the younger side, but like I said, I have no problem, learning and listening and seeing how it's done.
Okay. Tom, next question.
Okay, my next question deals with the power plant issue. What do you perceive as the pros and cons of the power plant contemplated for the southeast side of Brockton, and what is your position as to its construction?
And that would be first to Colleen.
I think some of the obvious pros is it will bring some money into the city of Brockton. There's also the issue of how much money Brockton is looking to spend trying to fight this battle. But ultimately, I'm opposed to it going in there just because I don't think it's the right spot for it. It dates back to a zoning bylaw that was somewhat overlooked, and it should not be going in there. I've been opposed to it as a West Bridgewater resident, since it's been brought up. And I think, whether it's the environmental or the fact that Brockton doesn't really actually see a lot of the power, it gets dumped back into the grid. So I just think the costs ultimately outweigh the benefit.
Okay, John?
I can't see any benefit for the city of Brockton or the surrounding towns. I've been a strong opponent of this for the past 6 years. I've testified in Beacon Hill and Boston numerous occasions, and I testified as chairman of my Board of Health. Now, the reason I bring that up is that one of the hearings that we had, I asked the question to the owners. This is when the original plan was to have 2 fuels, dual fuel, natural gas and oil. I asked for a deed restriction to the town of West Bridgewater if they would give me a deed restriction in terms of not allowing the diesel fuel to be stored, and I wouldn't get an answer. I got a no. So I think we need someone strong to fight up there just to make sure that we have to protect the groundwater for drinking purposes as opposed to money-making purposes.
Okay. Next question, Ray.
Do you support the gas tax being tied to inflation?
And that would be first to John.
No. I mean, I've got a proven track record of opposition to all the taxes that we've had in the past, and especially the gas tax. I mean, we elect legislators to make the tough decisions for us, not to pass it on to the next step. When I say that, I mean, if the gas tax needs to be increased years down the line, let the legislators make the decision. I see it as something that it's an easy out for these individuals, and that's why we put them in office. Again, I'm opposed to the gas tax. I've signed onto the petition, and I just think that we need to make sure that does not increase, because if they start with the gas tax, what's the next tax that they're going to increase automatically? It's just, it'll never end. Beacon Hill has a spending problem, not a revenue problem.
Okay. Next, Colleen?
So yeah, I'm adamantly opposed to tying the gas tax to inflation. That's actually one of the issues when I was starting to look at whether or not I wanted to enter the race. That was coming up. It had just been passed. And then luckily some legislators up on Beacon Hill said, let's get this a ballot question because, you know, the residents of Massachusetts seem to be leaning against it. And no one, you know, they're not fighting the 3-cent increase from the 21 to the 24. They're fighting the fact that it's going to automatically go up and never be able to go down. There's also the fact that tying it to inflation. That's one of the leading costs in rising inflation is the price of gas. And so it's this clear cycle that's just going to continue. You know, and supporters of tying it have said that we need this money to fix these roads when Beacon Hill has a history of saying that they're going to allocate these funds for X, Y, and Z, but the Tank the Tax people have, you know, released a whole list of the times that they've misallocated the funds that they said were going to go to roads. There's also the fact that, you know, the governor said he was going to release $300 million into just Chapter 90 funds, and then at the last minute withheld some of that. So there's no reason for it. And then I'm also just opposed to it because, you know, like I mentioned, no one's taking a vote on it, and that's just another, there's no accountability, and that's just another example of that.
Thank you. Okay, next question is from G.
Okay, this is an educational question. What are your thoughts regarding merit pay for teachers, and how do you ensure that a good teacher is not penalized for matters outside of his or her control?
Colleen?
Merit-based pay is something that has been, you know, I've been looking at whether or not it would be able to be effectively implemented, and I think you ultimately kind of nailed you nailed it on the head with the fact that it'll probably lead to teachers not wanting student X, Y, and Z in their classroom, knowing that it's going to be harder to educate them. There's also the fact that who would be ultimately, I mean, right now the principals and the superintendents evaluate these teachers, but them having the ultimate say is a little bit too much on them. So while I somewhat, you know, I love the idea of, you know, merit-based pay and, you know, working to get what you receive, ultimately, I just don't think as far as education, it would work.
John?
Well, I think what the purpose of merit-based pay is to the teachers that would be, they would receive a benefit obviously by the rating of the students. But who's to say what the students that they have to get? They don't pick and choose. So I think that would affect their grading, and I think that would be unfair to the teacher.
Okay, next question would be Tom.
My next question deals with immigration to some extent. What are your thoughts as to granting illegal immigrants Massachusetts driver's licenses and receiving state public assistance benefits, which include medical and housing?
John first.
I'm opposed to that. You know, I can understand what's happening, but, you know, my grandparents came to this country years ago, and I think they have to do it the right way. There's a right way and a wrong way, and the way that they're going around it right now is the wrong way. We shouldn't give illegal undocumented citizens the right to drive. We shouldn't give them, in my opinion, we shouldn't give them any benefits that are afforded to anything else but American citizens. I think we need to look at where we spend our money and how we spend our money, and I'm just opposed to those issues.
Colleen?
Yeah, I can't support, you know, there are plenty of residents, there are plenty of legal Massachusetts residents who need the benefits more. I understand that there are plenty of, you know, aspiring residents who are outstanding members of their communities and involved in their local churches, and, you know, I just think that there's a better solution to maybe a path to residency. But for right now to say, let's give them benefits and let's get them driver's licenses, all that's going to do is make us more of a magnet, whereas we need to deal with what we already have here and trying to find a way to, help make them citizens and also take care of our actual residents. So ultimately, I'm opposed to both of those.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask a question, and it has to do with the fact that you folks would represent multiple communities, Brockton being one, the entire town of West Bridgewater, and one precinct in East Bridgewater. My question is, how would you balance the interests of both communities when you're representing very different communities up on Beacon Hill? Start with Colleen.
So, yes, they are different communities. However, when I'm door knocking through all two in one city, two towns in one city, I noticed that a lot of the concerns are the same across the board. They're worried about pocketbook issues and kitchen table discussions as far as, their taxes continue to grow and property taxes, they're in trouble, they might lose their homes. And then also, for people who have children going through the school system and then going on to second education, the rising costs of college. So they're different communities, but it's a lot of the same concerns. And so, ultimately it comes down to local aid in funding our roads and our schools and our public safety. So that's basically, they're not incredibly different as far as overall.
Okay, John?
Well, speaking to the taxpayers, they're pretty much concerned about the same thing, their wallet. And they want people up there that are going to keep more money in their pocket. I mean, the differences between the Bridgewaters and Brockton aren't that huge. The basic need is the taxes. They're tired of money going up to Beacon Hill, going to some place that they don't feel that it's needed. They want help themselves. The Governor Patrick promised property tax relief years ago. That never happened. He promised increased local aid. That never happened as much to the degree that he had promised. I mean, the point is that people want to see more money coming back to them so they can see the services that greatly affect them the most and impact them the most.
Thank you. Another round of questions. We'll go to Ray.
Small businesses are currently being regulated to death. How will you work to lessen the burden on a small business?
And that would be John first.
Well, that's a good question. I'm the only one in the race that does have a small business. I've had a small business for the past 23 years, and I see the burdens that we have with reporting. The problem that I see right now is that government has no problem going back to the business to take more money out of their pocket, and they think that we can provide the services to our customers with less. I mean, that's not true. Why is it that government can do more when they take more money out of our pocket, but I can't do more with more of my money? I mean, I think it's very unfair that the government just looks upon business as another cash cow, and they have no problem of transferring the burden of taking taxes away from that business.
Colleen?
Yeah, the overregulation in this state has caused Massachusetts to fall to about the 47th friendliest business state. And you drive up and down every community and you just see all these empty storefronts because the cost of doing business is just way too high. So we need to look at, first I think we should create some type of subcommittee that looks at policies that are already on the book and says, is policy A still effective, or does the cost outweigh the benefits as far as, how business owners feel it affects them. There's also, we put, so many taxes and fees on, yearly registrations, et cetera. We need to scale those back a little bit. And then, also we just need to look at how they are treated as far as sometimes their tax rates go up higher than normal tax rates in the communities. And so that's unfair as well. So we just need to be more business friendly, start looking at, the fees that we charge them and also the policies that we're hitting them with.
Thank you. Okay, next would be Jean.
Okay. One more education question. To survive in today's economy, technology is essential in order for our students to be competitive in the workforce. What are the thoughts on ways to provide adequate funding for computer technology in our area's school systems, in particularly Brockton?
Colleen first.
So actually, Southeastern is a perfect example of, we have the TI program the night schools, and then we also have programs, vocational shops during the day for computer science. And I think if we can look at we need to look at the DOE and what they say. They have the licensing restrictions. At the end of the day, if they say this school is no good, then that's the end of it. So we need to look at, what restrictions we have as far as these online learning centers, and we need to open that up a little bit and say these online schools can work, and they're usually they're cheaper for us to send ourselves, through these schools. And so I support looking at, opening up the DOE to say, school X, which is an online school, can now, it also will lower the costs of other education, because if there's more competitors, obviously these other schools can't keep charging the high rate. So I think, Southeastern is a perfect example, actually, if you're looking for something right in the district to send them to learn computers.
John?
I think it comes down to more local control. I mean, we have mandates from Boston that tell us what we can do and where we can spend our money. But it comes down to local control. And that's why I'll be a strong advocate, like I was before, to get more local aid dollars back to the communities, back to the school committee that knows how to spend the money the best. I'm sure the Brockton School Committee knows how to spend money in their certain areas as opposed to the West Bridgewater School Committee and the East Bridgewater School Committee. That's what it's all about, getting more money back to our communities where they know how to spend the dollars to the best spots that it's needed on. It's as simple as that. We need to get more money back to the schools so they can understand, they understand the needs greater than Beacon Hill.
Okay, next question is Tom.
Pensions virtually do not exist in the private sector, and many Massachusetts citizens feel that they can never retire. Do you feel real pension reform should take place, and if so, what would it look like to you?
John first.
Absolutely. I mean, they had, a few years ago, there was pension reform up on Beacon Hill, but it still took care of the good old boys. I mean, right now, the pension liability is huge for the state, and it's huge for the communities that we will represent, that I will represent. That's something we have to look at. We have to come up with a positive funding mechanism, not kick the can down the road. We need to see what can be done to correct the issue, because it's not going to happen immediately. A few years down the road, we will have to pay. We will have to pay for the mistakes of past administrations, past legislators.
Colleen?
Unfortunately, there was a bill a few years ago, and it did not address the concerns. It didn't solve anything. As far as what I would like it to look like, almost run more of like a 401k, I would guess, and just have it be more individualized. Other states are doing these; they're kind of hybrid accounts. I've been trying to look at like what other states do, just because it's going to become an issue. Because up on Beacon Hill, we're making promises based off of what we think the economy is going to look like. Whereas if we can run it, as instead of a benefit and more of as like a contribution system where we put in X and it's matched, I think it would be much better. It could travel with you, et cetera. So I would like to see it shift more into like a 401k setup.
Okay. We're going to go for one more round of questions. I believe my panelists have them, so we'll go back to Ray.
Educational standards are changing and aligning to Common Core national standards. Currently, the state of Massachusetts is trying to decide whether or not to go with PARCC testing or stick with the MCAS testing. Are you in favor of MCAS or PARCC, and why?
Colleen first.
I would first like to just quickly mention Common Core, because you hear other supporters of it saying, oh, it'll bring money into the state, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think it's worth bringing money into the state where it's just gonna, it's gonna dumb down our students. It's a federal, it's meant to bring up the public schools in states that are not doing so well, but Massachusetts has arguably the best public school systems in the country. And so, not a supporter of Common Core. As far as PARCC, I think there's still a lot of unanswered questions to it. Ultimately, I am not in favor of it. I struggle with the idea of trying to do a math problem on a computer and there only being one correct answer. That's not to say, technology is, as we've talked about before, it's important, and online testing is important, but I don't think PARCC is the correct answer, because again, it's a federal test, and that's not to say MCAS is great. I think there needs to be some changes, and there's a lot of teaching to the test. but you can't completely get rid of standardized testing altogether. It's a necessary evil, but Park is not the answer to the issues with MCAS.
John?
Well, I think personally the different forms of testing it should be determined by the local school committee. I mean, I think unfortunately Beacon Hill comes down once again and they make the decisions that affect the different communities differently. I mean, I want to see that the local school committees have the tools required to do their job properly and take care of it too with their assessment of the students.
Okay, nice succinct answers. Next would be Jean.
Oh, okay. This one's for Colleen. So, am I taking you step?
I'll let you do it. Go ahead.
Okay.
We've been totally fair across the board.
Christine Canavan, who said she's resigning, that's good. But she did say that she referred to you as a Tea Party Republican. I refer to you as a Republican candidate. She has referred to you as a Tea Party Republican. How do you feel about this, and how would you combat that?
Nothing against Ms. Canavan. Also in that article, you know, I had said she was always kind to her constituents, and my disagreements with her were always just policy-wise. That said, I think she wants to keep the seat in the Democratic. She wants a Democrat to win this seat. She's been very open about the fact that she wants a Brockton Democrat to win this seat, and so I was the only one already in the race at the time, and I think it was just people hear Tea Party Republican and they think, okay, she's very far right and she's not going to compromise. I'm not. It depends on how you define Tea Party Republican, but I would say ultimately I'm not a Tea Party Republican. My Republican views are just, you know, limited government, lower taxes, and creating more jobs. And so, you know, ultimately, am I radically right? Absolutely not.
Okay, John, I don't know how you.
Well, I'd rather answer that if I can. I mean, I'm a conservative Republican. I mean, I'm not a Tea Party conservative. I'm a conservative Republican. I've been a Republican all my life. And I think that the Republican Party it stands for smaller government, lower taxes, get government out of our wallet. That's what it's all about. The Tea Party image, I mean, I can visualize a Tea Party image of the individual. I'm afraid of that. I'm not. I'm concerned for small government, less money out of our pocket to run the smaller government. I mean, that's what it's all about. Lower taxes, more money in our pocket, more disposable income.
Okay, and Tom?
If elected and you could choose 2 committee assignments, which would you choose and why?
And that would be John first.
Well, I'd like to be on Housing and Urban Development, or DHCD. I mean, I serve on my local housing authority. That's something that I can deal directly with the tenants, with the residents. I mean, Governor Patrick wanted to consolidate all the housing authorities. I was opposed to that. I voiced my opposition to it in public forum. And I think the second committee I'd like to be on would be not necessarily Ways and Means, but something that I can have direct contact with where our tax, maybe some sort of oversight committee. I don't know the exact name off the top of my head, but an oversight committee, so I can see where the taxes are going, not to see where the spending is going, not to make direct connection to it, but just to see as a whole where our money is going.
Colleen?
Yeah, House Ways and Means, I mean, obviously, I would love to be on that one because it is, you know, it's like the bread and butter in my eyes of being up on Beacon Hill. A second choice, I think the bonding committee, which is kind of weird, but I think that would be interesting as far as it's not quite oversight, but it's a good way to look at, you know, what we're doing with our money, and it's a good way to kind of look forward a little bit and just see what, you know, how we're going to handle things down the road. But I mean, I get my background is education, so I wouldn't mind education either. But.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you a question, and then I think we have time for a quick lightning round, and then we'll go into letting you ask each other a question and closing statements. My question, and someone asked this of me 2 years ago when I was running a different race, what do you have to say nice about your opponent? Colleen first.
I mean, he was the rep before, and I think, you know, it's nothing policy-wise. I think we agree on a lot. We agree on a lot of policy. You know, he was very nice when I originally, you know, intended to join the race, and I think right now it's just, you know, it's nothing personal. It's just 2 Republicans, you know, running in the primary.
Okay. John?
Well, it is nothing personal. I mean, Colleen comes from a good family. I know her parents very well. I mean, they're hardworking people. I mean, it's nothing personal. It's just a race that I think we have similar ideas. But I speak from experience. I'm the one that can actually carry the torch, and I can make it move further than someone that. And don't take this the wrong way, Colleen. That someone that's already been there that can move forward. There is no learning curve connected with me.
Okay, now, I am gonna, we have close to 10 minutes left. Let's do 3 quick, questions. It's a yes or a no answer or a very brief statement. You guys have done great in terms of longevity and brevity. So, Ray?
Charter schools, for or against?
And I lost my order, so we will go with John first.
4.
Okay, and Colleen?
4.
Okay. Jean?
Raising the minimum pay for fast food restaurants, how do you feel about that?
Flip it. John?
Opposed.
Against.
Tom?
Legalization on medical marijuana.
Colleen?
Against.
Opposed.
Okay. Let's do one more round if you
Oh
get
boy, you're really getting me to think.
a quick round. Ray?
Legalization of all drugs.
Okay.
Against.
Okay. Jean?
You got me past him. I will come back.
Okay. Tom?
Oh boy, you got me.
Okay.
I don't know. I've got to think about it.
Okay. Let us, time-wise, Jay's giving me the calculations over there. I love live television. It's so much fun. We have a total of, I can't see it, 6. Okay. I'm going to give you each a chance to ask each other a question. Okay. I'm going to start with John first.
Well, I guess the question would be, what life experiences do you have to date or in the past that would make you eligible for the position? I don't mean that in a bad sense. What have you learned so far in your life that would make you a great state representative?
So I just graduated college, so I know the cost of college. And I think we need to start looking at, other means of whether it's 3-year programs or online institutions, which I somewhat touched upon earlier. I think we definitely need to look at the cost of education costs, because that's a big problem for my generation. There's also employment. A lot of people my age are struggling to find jobs, and so we need to look at, how we're going to go from there. I've had a tenure on Southeastern Regional, and so I've seen school budgets. As far as work, I've worked for part-time while going through school, and so I know what it looks like when you have money taken out of your paycheck that is mismanaged, and so just those 3.
Okay. Colleen, question for John.
Speaker DeLeo has actually been named as an unindicted co-conspirator in the probation scandal. Do you think do you think we should push for, looking into how involved he was ethically in ethical investigation, or do you think, the scandal is over and let it lie?
I don't think it should just stop at Speaker DeLeo. I think every legislator that's up there should be investigated, or why stop at the top? I mean, again, it's the media that called him the unindicted individual. But why stop there? I think everybody should be looked at up on Beacon Hill. Everybody. I'm pushing for transparency. That's what we need. We can't have any hidden agendas. We need to take care of. The people that commit the crime need to do the time. It's as simple as that. I mean, we can't continue to go on. It just gives government a bad name.
Thank you both for participating. I want to make sure we have plenty of time for closing statements, and the order of closing statements is Colleen first. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. So obviously, my name is Colleen Maloney, and I'm running in the Republican primary for the Plymouth 10th seat. I just think, it's time that the Beacon Hill has been really retroactive in what they've been passing as far as issues. We saw it mostly with the text tax. We didn't really know what was in the bill, but the legislatures, they passed it, and then they immediately had to repeal it because it would have ruined that industry. And so I'm the youngest one on the ticket, but I think we need someone up there who is going to look at, it really matters to our generation what the state's going to look like 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road, because we're going to be the ones that are in the workforce and living through it. And so I think we need someone that is going to get up there and start looking at things like, as mentioned, where we're going to be with pensions or cost of education or employment, where we want to be 10 years from now, and start passing some legislation and start working on some changes that can address those concerns, to the best of our ability now.
Okay, John?
Well, thank you, Mark, and thank you to the panelists. Again, my name is John Cruz, and I'm a candidate for state representative. I think we have to look at what's most important in this race, and that's someone with experience. I'm the only candidate in this race that has experience. I was a state representative 20 years ago. And that being said, is that I can continue moving forward with the ideas that we need best, and that is to make a smaller government, put more money in our pocket, to increase our standard of living as opposed to decreasing our standard of living. I'm also a small businessman. I've been the proud owner of Consolidated Plumbing for the past 23 years, so I know what it's like to sign the back of a paycheck as well as the front. It's something that we need to look at. We need business sense up there. We need to know that you can't spend beyond your means. I've been running a business for 23 years, like I said, and I can't spend beyond my means. And unfortunately, the mentality up on Beacon Hill is that if we have the money, we'll spend it. It's a perfect example of why the budget has increased dramatically over the past 7 years of the current administration. I'm also a member of my fire department in town. I'm also a member of my housing authority, which one of the committees, like I mentioned earlier, I'd like to be on DHCD to take care of the seniors and the people that are the most vulnerable right now. Again, my name is John Cruz. I'm a candidate for state representative. I'd appreciate your consideration for a vote next Tuesday. If you need to get in touch with me, it's very easy. I've got a landline, which is area code 508-588-VOTE. That's VOTE. Again, that's area code 508-588-VOTE. And I ask for your consideration for a vote next Tuesday. Thank you.
And I want to thank all the candidates, and I want to thank my panelists. This was an excellent debate. We've got time for a lot of questions, and Brockton Community Access is very pleased to put on these forums so the voters can see people live and in person, and get to have a feeling about what they stand for and what they could do for them if elected. We did the Democratic debate and the Republican debate, and Brockton Community Access will have more live election coverage. It's going to be a little interesting this year because since it involves the city of Brockton, West Bridgewater, and one precinct in East Bridgewater, that's the race we're going to follow. We are not the place to look for the governor's race results on election night. So once again, I want to thank my crew, thank my staff, and ask you to continue to watch Brockton Community Access, your connection to the community, and just make sure on September 9th you do go out and vote and make your choice and your voice be heard. Thank you very much.